Good morning, guys. Today's video is my favorite vegetable to grow, and it's growing pumpkins from seed all the way to harvest. I started this video in April time, and it sort of concludes now in September with sort of harvesting. But yeah, really hope you enjoy this video, and let's get into it. So the best time to sow your pumpkin seeds is in April and May. What you want to do is you want to avoid the cold weather. They need some heat to germinate. So April, May is a really good time. I typically start mine off indoors and then bring them out. Now, sowing pumpkins is not complicated. They're really big seeds, and you very much bury them in compost, sort of 1 or 2 inches deep. And because they're a big seed, there's lots of energy in the seed, and they really kind of explode. But there is one thing that often gets talked about with pumpkin seeds and squash seeds generally, and that is because they're quite a hard outer shell of the seed, you can nick the seed, which is basically just taking a chip out of the edge of the seed, just to allow moisture to get inside and trigger the germination process. Now, I did a bit of a trial of this in April. I did make a short video on it, and I basically found the results to be a bit inconclusive. I'm not sure it makes a huge amount of difference, but if you are having problems with germinating pumpkin seeds, maybe that's something to try. But overall, they should germinate very quickly, and then we're on to the next segment of the video. So once you've sown your pumpkins, and if you did this in April like me, you'll have something about this size in sort of beginning of May, and pumpkins grow really quickly. They're, it's quite a big seed and there's lots of energy in it. So once you have sown it and it does germinate, they really sort of spring up. So you won't be sort of having them in pots for very long before you need to plant them out. And that's what we're going to do today, really. So you could do this in any old ground, really, but one thing to remember with pumpkins, they're really heavy feeders. They like lots of nitrogen, lots of sort of nutrients. So what I've got here is some black plastic, but under the black plastic is manure. And I'm going to go through the next process. So this bit is optional, but what I'm going to do here in my black plastic is cut across. If you were just growing in the ground, that's no bother, but the benefit of the black plastic is two. One, it obviously suppresses weeds and retains moisture, but the main thing it does well is it absorbs heat. Now, pumpkins absolutely love heat, so this is going to hopefully give me a really good harvest of pumpkins this year. So, once you've prepared your hole like this, you can sort of get it ready for planting. Now, one thing you sort of need to try and do is create a bit of a well for your plant to go in, because obviously the water is going to run off the black plastic. Obviously, if you're planting just into ground, you haven't got to worry about this. But what I've got to do is I've got to try and make sure the plant is deeper than the surrounding stuff, so that the water can kind of, as I compact it down, will sort of run into the hole and water the plant. Otherwise, I'm going to have to be doing a lot of sort of single point watering, which isn't a big deal, but something to consider. Now, once you've got it and your hole's ready, you can look at planting your pumpkin. Now, this one's not doing very well. There's some holes in the leaves for some reason, but the plant will generally grow in a sort of vine-like trail, and the direction of that is you can normally determine from where the first true leaf is. So you get these 2 seedling leaves here and here, and then you get this big main leaf, and then here you've sort of got all the other leaves, which indicates the trail is going to sort of go out this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant it so that it's going to trail out behind me, and then I'm going to sort of do these other ones that are in front of me, slightly different directions, so they're not overlapping too much, because you could have a problem there where you haven't got very much moisture and things. You've got too much sort of humidity in the air, and you can get things like powdery mildew and things. So giving them a bit of space to make sure they don't get too sort of crowded is definitely a good thing. So that is planting out your pumpkins, but the main thing to remember is wait till they've got a reasonably established root system, and also wait until the nighttime temperatures are above 10 degrees Celsius. That way, they're not going to struggle too much in the cold. So I've got a sort of spell of quite warm weather for the next 10 days. So hopefully these plants will be fine. So it's the 13th of July, and if you've done everything right, your pumpkin's going to look something like this. And really, in order to do this, they just need lots of nutrients, lots of water, and lots of heat, and they'll look like this. Now, not too much to do at this point. In England, there's not a lot of pests or anything. At some point, you might see some of the leaves get a sort of powdery mildew. Don't worry about that too much. It sort of naturally happens as the plant ages. But what you will notice is that you'll get two types of flowers on any squash plant, and it'll be a male and a female flower. So the female, and I'll do a close-up of a female flower, has the sort of fruit at the base of the flower connected to the stem, whereas the males don't have this. And also, if you look inside the male plant, you'll notice a sort of protruding sort of stamen, and that's obviously what will rub onto the bees, and then when the bees go and visit the female flowers, it helps with pollination. So personally, I just leave it all up to nature to do this, but what you can do is you can manually do it. You could manually sort of grab a male flower, cut it off, and then go and hand pollinate the female flowers, but I personally wouldn't bother. So it's now the middle of September, and these pumpkins are ready to harvest. Depending on the size of the pumpkin will depend on how late they become ready. Very big pumpkins, you're going to be looking at sort of October, maybe later, depending on when you planted them. But the smaller the pumpkin is, the quicker they ripen and the quicker they're ready. So September, you can be looking to harvest your pumpkins. Now, before you go straight in and harvest your pumpkins, there's a few things you want to check to make sure that they are ripe. Now, a good rule of thumb is if you sowed them in April, they're probably ready in September. And if you sowed them in May, probably got to wait till October. But you've got to harvest pumpkins before the frost comes in. If they freeze, the pumpkins won't store very well. They'll go soft and mushy and inedible. So you've got to harvest them. But what you want to do is you want to check the pumpkin and see if it's ready to harvest. Now, three main ways I do this. One is I look at the stem, and if it's gone from a green color to a woody color, it's probably ready to harvest. Second thing I do is I try and pierce the pumpkin with my nail, and if my nail doesn't easily pierce the skin, I know that that pumpkin is probably ready. It's got quite a hard skin on it. Second thing I do is I knock on the pumpkin, and if it sounds hollow on the inside, that's another good sign that it's ready. Sort of I use those three sort of signs to help me indicate when it's ready, but realistically, look at the time of year you're in. Are they going to be ready or not? Don't try and harvest them too early. Probably better to do it too late than too early. But the other main thing here is the plant is dying. So this plant here, it's not photosynthesizing very much. There's not a lot of nutrients going back into this plant. It's not really going to get any sweeter. It's not going to get any riper. So yeah, without further ado, you can harvest them. Now, all I sort of try and do with this is I harvest them with as much of the stem still on as possible. The reason I do that is because, and I'll do a bit of close-up, as this dries out, it's basically forming a barrier to any bugs getting inside the pumpkin and rotting it from the inside. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to be in the kitchen cutting open a pumpkin and finding it's all rotten inside. So it's another good indicator of sort of how long you can store these pumpkins for. Now I've harvested all my pumpkins here at the allotment, and all that's left to do is for me to sort of cure them. Fairly interesting expression, but all it really means is I'm going to leave it in a sort of sunny windowsill or maybe a sunny conservatory for about a week or so before I put them into sort of long-term storage. And that's just to help the skin dry out and go a little bit harder, making sure the pumpkin stores throughout the winter. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. That is sowing pumpkins from seed to harvest. The variety here is Burgess Buttercup, which is designed for sort of eating and sort of taste, as opposed to sort of size or carving or anything like that, which lots of varieties are designed for. But yeah, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.